Star Wars Jedi Survivor is absolutely the Star Wars game that I have been craving for years. Set 5 years after the events of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, we get to experience the Star Wars universe from the perspective of Cal Kestis once more, except now he's a battle-hardened Jedi Knight. This game takes Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and improves upon it in most aspects 1,000-fold. Is it without issue? No, it has got plenty of those, granted. But I came away from my playthrough of Star Wars Jedi Survivor feeling incredibly positive. Before we get going, I'd like to slap a potential spoiler warning on this video. Whilst I don't plan on diving into major story details regarding Jedi Survivor in this video, the footage shown may let some info out. Also, I played with subtitles on, so there's a possibility that some details will slip through, but hopefully I can evade them to the best of my abilities. Also, you're on YouTube, and there are people out here with quite a following who simply post raw gameplay with their watermark on it, and spoilers in the title. And thumbnail, of course, so it's entirely possible that a video might be suggested to you that spoils the entire experience. So if spoilers are something that bother you and they're something you'd wish to avoid, understandably so, of course, then I'd play the game and stay off YouTube until you do. Regardless, if that's not you, or you've played through the game and finished the game, then ideal, we're going to have a good time. If you're willing to risk it, you're of course more than welcome. I can't dictate who does or doesn't watch the content, just as I have no say what might get suggested to you by YouTube's recommended section. But regardless, we're going to crack on because I don't necessarily want to spend the entire video talking about the prospect of getting spoiled. But before we do that, this video is sponsored by the Ridge Wallet. Have you ever looked at your bulky wallet and realised how much it actually stands out in your pocket? So much for out of sight, out of mind. Hear me out. You need the Ridge Wallet. The Ridge Wallet is a compact, virtually indestructible wallet that holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash, whilst remaining slim and comfortable. Your cards simply slide in and out of your wallet as and when you need them, and the wallet does the same with your pocket. They can come in over 30 different colours and styles, including carbon fibre, burnt titanium, forged ember, and burnt Damascus, which is my personal favourite, and are designed with RFID blocking materials to protect you from digital pickpocketing. You can even get optional AirTag attachments so you'll never lose your wallet ever again. Along with it, why not try the Ridge key case? It can securely hold up to 6 keys, prevents jingling for stealthily creeping out of your house when you get the munchies at 3 AM, and you can get up to 30% off when purchased with a Ridge Wallet. Ridge Wallet have over 3 million customers, over 50,000 5-star reviews, and the Ridge team are so confident that you'll like your new wallet that you can test drive it for 99 days. If you don't love the wallet, simply send it back for a full refund. The durability of the wallet means you'll never need to purchase another one again. The wallet can outlive you, therefore each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. If a Ridge wallet tickles your fancy, head over to ridge.com/Fizhy and use the code Fizhy for a 10% discount. That's ridge.com/Fizhy. And with that said, back to the video. Before we get into the positives, why don't we address the elephant in the room? This game is plagued with bugs and performance issues. I heard it's certainly worse on PC, but I preempted this and chose to play on PS5, hoping that I would avoid the vast majority of the problems. It's not uncommon for a recently released game to have copious amounts of problems in this vein, and considering that when Jedi Fallen Order released, it had its own set of issues, I was 100% expecting a similar story for Jedi Survivor. And even on console, players have reported various problems with performance and bugs, and though I consider myself to be incredibly lucky this time in that respect, usually if somebody's going to find a way to break a game, it's going to be me, as I only really experienced some minor frame drops in cutscenes and the occasional bout of the physics shitting themselves. So I count myself fortunate in that respect because these problems were minor and I could look past them easily and enjoy the game that I'd paid to play. But I also understand why some players may not necessarily be as willing to look past it when their experience has been completely tanked by a game performing like a dodgy colonoscopy. It's weird that the standard is a release to the public has become another tier of troubleshooting for the games industry. People pay to play a game that at least functions properly, and not delivering on your intended release date to me, is just not acceptable. On a technical level, it's impossible for a product such as this to be 100% perfect, so by that logic, you can certainly break any game on the market at the moment, if you try hard enough anyway. But when the game does the hard work for you, that's when there's an issue. And some players have reported encountering bugs that completely broke the game and they had to restart from scratch in order to get around it. It's good that Respawn is planning to fix up Jedi Survivor as best they can, and patches are certainly just a part of life in modern gaming now, but in my opinion the best time to ensure the game doesn't lemon out on people is before you release it to the public. But that's the big issue, and like I said, I can't speak to that one from first-hand experience very much, as for the most part Jedi Survivor functioned agreeably for me, and I only got some minor problems that I could certainly laugh off. But it would be wrong of me to dismiss that problem outright, because many players experienced it, and it's something that clearly needs to be sorted out. And with the performance slap on the wrist aside, I'd argue the rest of the game holds up to the status of almost a masterpiece. Star Wars Jedi Survivor obviously reintroduces us to the character of Cal Kestis 5 years following the events of Jedi Fallen Order. The once young Padawan who was knighted in the field is now a seasoned Jedi Knight, one who is fighting the Empire because, in his mind, that's all that he's able to do. I'll save explaining most of the narrative for perhaps a story explanation / story analysis video that I might do separately. I'm not decided yet on whether or not I can be bothered, but you get the point. Cal retains the abilities that we unlocked over the course of Jedi Fallen Order, aside from the health upgrades and health stims and force upgrades. So we've got all of that to play with completely off of the bat, alongside new abilities that we can unlock in a much more expansive skill trees system, and then there are skills that unlock as we naturally progress through the narrative. We are overloaded with mechanics progressively here, granting Cal an expansive repertoire of abilities that will aid us in navigating the world spaces and fighting the various different archetypes of foes along the way. The biggest difference to gameplay you'll notice occurs in combat, and that will be the stances. Compared to Jedi Fallen Order, where you had 2 different stances, the single blade and the double blade, you now have 5 different stances, of which at any given moment you can have 2 equipped. The stances are single blade, dual blade, lightsaber and blaster, and dual wielding. Then there's also the crossguard. Think of it as like a greatsword. To change which stances you have equipped, you need to visit a meditation point, and you can only equip 2 at a time. They all deal damage differently, they have different speeds, and they have different defensive ratings, but considering you have everything you need to use this in open combat without visiting a meditation point, but you just have to anyway, to me the idea of it demonstrating the versatility of Cal's fighting style is a little bit lost by this slight mechanic, because the game is simply crammed with perhaps too many to allow for you to seamlessly switch between all 4 stances, say in a single fight. Ghost of Tsushima is the other example with fighting stances, specifically 4 of them, and we can change between those at any time in the middle of a fight through a simple button combination. Then we can use that to fit certain enemy archetypes. I believe that game handles stances far better than Jedi Survivor does, with it restricting you to having to visit a meditation point if you want to use a different stance to the 2 you've got equipped, as I don't necessarily understand why at any point in Universe Cal would need to actually visit a random place and meditate for a bit before he can pull his blaster out of his pocket. I understand that the concept of stances in Jedi Survivor are fundamentally different to the concept of stances in Ghost of Tsushima. As in Jedi Survivor, the stances are a means for the player to play to their strengths and find stances that suit their playstyle, rather than to face certain enemy archetypes, engaging vastly different foes in a fluid motion. But game mechanics that don't actually make immersive sense do get my goat quite a fair bit. The end result is you wind up using the 2 stances that you find to be most effective, and then you just forget that the other 3 exist. Because in this setup, they may as well just not. Regardless, the combat in this game is very fun and incredibly enjoyable, because you're a Jedi, you're a space wizard, you've got a laser sword, and you're swinging it, and there's mutilation, and it's sick. And the challenge is there to force you to use all the tools you've been granted in combat to your advantage. Not that I will ever master them, because I suck at games, but it's still good. That being said, I have played around with all 4 of the stances that this game offers, and none of them are bad. It's just a shame that you can't seamlessly utilise the lot. Another difference in combat that you may notice is the wider variety of enemy archetypes. As you progress through the game, the cannon fodder stormtrooper becomes far less common, and there are entirely different factions of foes to go along with them as well. So you'll have battle droids, courtesy of the Bedlam Raiders, and they come out with some really funny things at times, but the main thing is battle droids are just entertaining, even if they aren't necessarily that challenging in themselves. And then they have tiers within, say, the factions, so there are different types of droids that fight incredibly differently, and these different types of droids may fight differently to their Imperial equivalents. The game's combat as a result is arguably far more diverse than Jedi Fallen Order's, as there's a larger variety of enemies with different attack patterns and weaknesses. Moving on from that, there's also a wide range of accessibility when it comes to the game difficulty. So you can go from piece of piss difficulty all the way up to this game is going to raise your stress levels through the roof and give you a heart problem. So you can give yourself as much or as little challenge as you want. There's also a buddy AI system where in certain scenarios or certain world spaces you'll have an ally with you fighting by your side, and this ally is actually useful and not just another obstruction in the middle of combat. Granted, sometimes things can become a little bit of a clusterfuck, but for the most part it's fine, and even at points can be quite refreshing. And another thing I can appreciate is the game understands not to necessarily overdo this, because whilst it's great to have some aid in certain combat situations, it's also incredibly rewarding to firm a challenging set of foes on your own. In main story scenarios where this AI system makes sense to be implemented, they come and go as and when they're needed / not needed, and it fits within the story being told, so in that respect, it's the best of both worlds. Moving on from the combat, because I fundamentally suck at it, the game's traversal has also been vastly improved from Jedi Fallen Order. World spaces are more than just windy corridors, and there's fast travel at meditation points. We also have mounts now, and though the game doesn't tell you this, you can indeed pet them. Or you could just not do that and show zero compassion to the animal you just hypnotized into domestication. But the main quality here is there's more to explore in a world where there's more to it than a windy path, and Jedi Survivor is certainly an improvement over Fallen Order in that regard. Due to the larger world spaces, there is side content to be had in the form of rumours. You can pick these up by interacting with NPCs who both may or may not be relevant to the main story. And whilst this side content is typically far from complex, it can be enjoyable and rewarding just the same. There are 2 main worlds that possess these open spaces, being Kobo and Jeddah, and both have many secrets and items to discover and collect, along with an endless supply of enemies to fight. There are plenty of points where you feel as if you can take off and explore the world and have it feel natural for the story progression, and that's something that I can appreciate as well. As good and as gripping as the story is, it's nice that it has these moments where you feel as if you can just go and take in the world a little bit here or there and do some side content and interact with characters that you find in the world space. It's also pleasant to have hub areas aside from the Mantis, with Pyloon's Saloon on Kobo and a full-on sanctuary on Jeddah, where we can interact with various characters and just relax and take in some scenery in a more expansive way than the Mantis allowed us to do so, whilst also feeling safe. But you get the idea, it's a nice improvement from Jedi Fallen Order. It's nice to have something to explore and also participate in downtime. And then of course, on top of all of that, the Mantis still exists as you need it to travel between worlds. So Jedi Survivor hasn't lost the magic of in-transit Grease dialogue. So that's going to be a staple, I suppose. It's a shame you can't customise the Mantis though, but more on that shortly. As far as the world spaces go, Jedi Survivor takes Jedi Fallen Order's approach and opens it up to give you that more open approach on Jeddah and Kobo at least, so you can go off and explore and spend time just doing whatever you fancy. Chasing rumours, fighting enemies, interacting with NPCs, giving yourself either 5 minutes or 2 hours simply immersing yourself in what the Star Wars universe has to offer in this game. This is an improvement because it's something that Jedi Fallen Order didn't necessarily do. I mean, it's hardly existed in a vacuum, but I'm talking about interacting casually with the pre-existing world building. And that is where Jedi Survivor's world spaces thrive just a touch more than Fallen Order's. Another huge positive in Jedi Survivor's corner is the customization has been improved. They've removed customizing the Mantis by giving it a different paint job to the bog standard, which I think is a shame, but there are more customization options for Cal and BD1. Of course, you can customize your lightsaber again with parts that you find whilst exploring the world space. You also find hairstyles and beards in crates, because that makes sense, and you can also customize your blaster that you will use with your blaster stance. As for outfits, you can customize the components individually, so your shirt is separate from your jacket, and your pants and boots are separate from your shirt and jacket, though they are connected, and there are several colours for each, though you'll have to find the colour pack separate to the jacket itself. It's nice to have a touch more customization than just an outfit, a poncho, the colours of BD1 and a lightsaber. So despite not being able to give the Mantis a new paint job, the customization gets a top grade from me. But all of that positive gameplay stuff is just that, gameplay stuff, and whilst that is incredibly useful when this is indeed a video game, the thing that makes Star Wars Jedi Survivor feel like an excellent Star Wars game is the story that it tells. And whilst I don't necessarily want to go into any details here, I'd like to give some of my thoughts and feelings on that story in a very general and hopefully non-spoilery way. I will mention some plot significant things that occur towards the start of the game, but any ending stuff, no chance. It will just be as general and as broad as I can make it. So with that said, let's talk a bit of story, shall we? The main positive to take away from Star Wars Jedi Survivor's main story is that it embraces the fact that it is a sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. Where Jedi Fallen Order had to use the pre-established universe and fan service as lightly as possible, Jedi Survivor can make its own fan service. With the Jedi Fallen Order story now told, Cal Kestis isn't a new character. He's not somebody that needs to be introduced. And there are new characters who get introduced, but because Cal's not new to the world that he's now in, we don't necessarily need to see how those characters came together. Jedi Fallen Order was the beginning of Cal's journey, and any new characters in Jedi Survivor can be introduced naturally and developed at their own pace. Or just, yeah, that works too. But with Jedi Fallen Order functioning as the foothold into this story, into Cal's journey, now things can move ahead and we can see how he's coping with this lifestyle several years after that game. We get to experience what aspects of the character has changed, and we also get to see what's the same. We see a more confident Jedi Knight Cal Kestis in contrast to the less confident Padawan Cal Kestis, and we also see the impact of fighting the Empire for years. This grants the game agency to explore darker themes within Cal, and how that in turn then affects the story being told, whilst simultaneously sticking to the fundamental principles of what makes Cal Kestis compelling as a protagonist. Jedi Fallen Order went over the MacGuffin chase of a holocron with a list of names of Force-sensitive children across the galaxy. Cal's no longer necessarily interested in leading the charge in rebuilding the Jedi Order, nor is it about making a big stand against the Empire. However, as time's gone on, Cal's noticed the Empire has only gotten stronger and the galaxy has plunged further into darkness and fear. Cal's goal, as revealed to him during the story and to us the audience in the trailers, is instead to find somewhere that could be a potential safe haven from the Empire, somewhere they couldn't reach them. This Pilaf leads us down an absolute treasure trove of Star Wars lore. Again, it chiefly focuses on things that tells its own story rather than events that may impact the broader Star Wars canon, and like Jedi Fallen Order before it, Star Wars Jedi Survivor benefits massively from not straying too close to the original Star Wars movie, which then gives us the opportunity to learn a bucket load of world building information that's more relevant to Cal's journey than anybody else's. We get to see the development of bonds between characters that were introduced in Jedi Fallen Order and the development of bonds with newer characters that were introduced for this game. And I am fully aware that I will not be able to do this explanation justice until, say, a story analysis video, so maybe I'm convincing myself to do it here. But to summarise it as best as I can, the narrative is an emotional journey, one that is absolutely rich, filled to the brim with lore and world building and characters that are both likeable and a couple that aren't, and the story functions amazingly as a self-contained narrative, focusing on the significance of characters over massive events. Whilst I do have a couple of gripes, I cannot even count the amount of times this narrative smacked a stupid grin on my face. And maybe that's the best way to measure a Star Wars story. How many times does it give you a stupid grin? If the answer is many, provided the storytelling is rich and thoughtful, then job's a good one. And that is exactly the experience that Jedi Survivor provides. In my opinion, the story is almost a masterpiece, and no excellent plot would be complete without an amazing soundtrack to cap it off, and Jedi Survivor almost certainly has that. So to conclude me mashing my thoughts into an inconcise, convoluted video, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is phenomenal. It sports massive gameplay improvements over Jedi Fallen Order. It's not perfect in that respect, but for the most part, it's certainly a step up, or a million steps up in some instances. The game thrives in its lightsaber combat, which is what you want when you're playing as a Jedi in a video game, and the world spaces have an exceptional attention to detail, with much more focus being on the world building around the characters and the story being told. The environments look gorgeous, the Easter eggs and references are plentiful, and there's so much lore to be consumed that upon completing the game I immediately started a New Game Plus playthrough, which is another feature that's been massively improved over Jedi Fallen Order. From a narrative standpoint, the story is gripping and it feels right for a seasoned Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. The cast of actors smash it out the park and there's a nice soundtrack to boot, so it's a damn shame that a lot of players are experiencing technical problems with the game, because underneath that there's something truly special here. Once that problem's been resolved to an agreeable degree, I will not be able to recommend this game enough, because it's my opinion that Star Wars Jedi Survivor, besides the bugs and the glitches and the performance problems, is incredibly close to being an absolute masterpiece. And that brings us nicely to the end of today's Alphabet Pasta. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you've enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. That would be massively appreciated. Be sure to check out our history channel, Decades. I recently posted another video over there, so if you're interested in history, follow the link in the description and definitely check it out. But with any luck, I'll be seeing you all here very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care and goodbye.